Hello, my name's Sophie Wells. I'm the dance teacher at Woking College, teaching dance A-level. So I'm here to tell you about the course. I'm also here to give you a taster on the kind of activities we do and the way we link together performance, choreography and the theoretical side of the course in a very brief kind of lesson. Behind me are some details of the course that I would like to talk to you about, so they're to help me to talk you through. So A-level dance is split into two sections. 50% is theory, 50% is practical. The theory is split up into four fairly easy sections. The first one is up here, Rambert Dance Company 1966 to 2002. Within that, we have to cover a set work, which is a second section of the course, and the set work is called Rooster by Christopher Bruce. Within that, we cover the practical elements, so we use some of it when I talk about the solo in a minute. We use some of his work as our solo examples, but we talk through each of his individual scenes in Rooster and analyse them, which obviously you might have experienced if you've done GCSE dance or if indeed you've done the BTEC level 2. Within that, we look at the movement content, the link to sound, we look at how they use spacing, how they use relationships and partnering, and how it links to certain themes, stimulus, and various other things. This piece is really exciting and interesting work. It was set in the 1960s, so it's quite popular culture. We can link and engage with that by using it later on in some of the practical work that I'm going to set for you. Within Rambert, we also have to cover some other choreographers. So we look at all the directors, artistic directors within that period. So Richard Alston, and then we examine some of his other work. So for example, this year, we've looked at strong language in our analysis work, and we've also done it as a quartet. So we're linking the two together constantly. We will also look at Siobhan Davies, at Robert North, at Glenn Tetley, and various other choreographers, as well as the directors. Through that, we look at the history of the company, how it developed, how sociological and historical changes impacted on the company to turn it into Rambert that it is today. So that's part of it. In the exam situation, for those two areas of study, you end up with some short answer questions, generally on Rooster, and a longer essay question on Rambert, on its history, on its directors, on the works within it. So it's more general, more generic. The other area of study that we talk about, I'm going to move to let you see, is here. And this area of study is jazz. So it's American jazz, and it's quite an exciting area of study. We talk about Gene Kelly, we talk about Jerome Robbins, we talk about Bob Fosse, and then we touch on Agnes de Mille and Jack Cole. Now, you might think you don't know who those people are, but the area of study that we focus on within this American jazz section is Singing in the Rain, which is a really interesting and exciting piece of choreography. It's a musical, it makes it fun. From that, we've managed to devise quartets and solos suitable for the practical element of study. So if you're a strong tapper or you're strong at jazz, then that's a really exciting area to go towards. Again, we use Bob Fosse within the practical element. So lots of people will opt to do the quartet in a jazz style, such as Bob Fosse does in Chicago, Sweet Charity, and so on. Jerome Robbins is responsible for West Side Story, which I'm almost certain you'll have heard of. Some of you might have even looked at it within your GCSE work or your BTEC work. So those are the separate areas. Within those two areas that we just spoke about, the specific divisions are American jazz and Singing in the Rain. Each of those within the exam paper are split as 2 separate essays. So basically the theory paper, which were 50%, has 3 essays, one on Rambert, one on Singing in the Rain, and one on American jazz. The other section is Rooster, which is the short answer question. So that is the entire theory study. The practical element is split into 3 as well. So there are 20 marks allocated to a solo, and the solo must be based on a specific practitioner within the syllabus. Now, I've spoken about several there in American jazz. I've also spoken about several in Rambert. And you can use any of those choreographers, but you can also use choreographers from elsewhere in the syllabus. There are other optional areas of study that we do not cover. So, for example, Giselle is part of the syllabus. So if you're a strong ballet dancer, then you might opt to do a romantic ballet piece within the criteria given. There is also a British contemporary choreographers section, so you could choose to do a piece from Akram Khan or Matthew Bourne, for example. So we are here to help you support you do any alternative pieces that we haven't covered. But this year, for example, in terms of solos, we have done a contemporary piece by Jasmine Vardamon. We have done a contemporary piece from Richard Alston. We have done Ruby Tuesday from Christopher Bruce, and we have done Singing in the Rain by Gene Kelly. In terms of quartets, we've looked at Crunchy Granola from Bob Fosse, Good Morning from Singing in the Rain. We have done Ghost Dances from Christopher Bruce, Strong Language from Richard Alston, to name a few. We've also looked at Matthew Bourne, the bar scene in Swan Lake. So we've tried to give them as much kind of range and choice as possible leading into year 2, so they can make selections for their practical exam. The last part of the practical exam, so I've kind of touched on the solo, the quartet I've also talked about, that is also worth 20 marks. And then the final part of that is the choreography, which is worth 40 marks. You have to choreograph with a group of 3 to 5 dancers, and the piece must be 3 to 4 minutes, and you are given a choice of 3 stimuli at the beginning of the year, in year 2. So those stimuli might be an image, might be a picture or a sculpture. It might be music, might be a more kind of music-based piece we've had. It could be literally a theme or a historical event. For example, the suffragettes has been an event that they focused on in the past. So there are a various range of stimuli that you could do. We then investigate all of those and then make sure that you make an informed choice as to the correct way forwards that you're going to be able to create a piece with your dancers that answers the question. It's in effect an essay question, but in movement form. So I'm going to touch on some of those things practically now. The first thing I'm going to do, I'd like you to find a small space to dance in. If you could pause the video if you need to. We're going to do a short warm-up, and then I'm going to give you some ideas to work on a task based on Paint It Black, which is within Rooster from Christopher Bruce, which is easily accessible on YouTube. So if we get on with the warm-up, I'm just going to go and move you over and start the music. Rolling down. So So roll and drop. Nice parallel feet, stretching up and parallel. You're going to reach up, up, then roll and shoot up with the bottom. Reach up. Roll. Okay, turn head side to side. Half head. Too long. And you're up. Shoulder, elbow, and two arms. And again. Shoulder, elbow, two arms. Roll all the way down, head first. Then, and stretch. Then, and stretch. Coming all the way up. And roll all the way down. Hold at the bottom. Then, stretch. Then, and stretch on toes. Mobilize your hips side to side with a bit of rest. Big shoulder roll. Bring your feet in. Up. And again. And point. So go forward. Side. Back and squeeze in. Front. Side. Back. Squeeze in. One spot. Pull it up. Large posture. Okay, we're doing a little pony drop. Do not take them off the floor yet. Okay, do 4 jumps. And then jump. 4 jumps. Here you go, room to travel, you can travel. Okay, swing. Swing, up and over. Travel if you can. Up and over. Good, well done. Okay, what we're going to do is going to go into a little bit more of a warm-up. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to roll all the way down into a press up position. When you get there, do down, up, lower your hips, push up, then come back down, bottom up, put your hands down, push up, put your hands in, and then rolling up. One spot, roll all the way down, into press up. Down and up, down and up, push your hips down, push up, come down, come back up, hands together, and curl. Good, okay, fun thing with the arms, we're going up, out, down and out, up, out, down. Right, then you're going to go up and down, but just with that arm. Okay, the other arm is going back to doing this one. Let's do it. Up, out. Good. Super quick. Brilliant. Right, arms here, out. Grip side to side. Lunge side to side. Good. Bring your arm across. And the other arm across. Arm down. And the other arm. One leg back in stretch. And the other leg. Bring that foot in, hold on. Front of the foot, bend your knees, hips forward. Hips forward. Take a lifted leg forward. Try not hold the knee. And the other leg. Okay, turn the feet up. You just do bend, stretch, bend, stretch. And a big stretch. Very good. Right, so I'm just going to talk you through the whole idea of Paint It Black. And what we're going to do is have a look at the movement content, bearing in mind it is a 1960s theme within the work. It isn't only, let me just stop that one sec, sorry. It isn't the only theme within the work. There are several things we talk about within the work, but in this piece of movement and choreography, we could just quickly going to touch on. We're going to talk mostly about the 60s theme. So in the 1960s, movement had moved on from partner dancing, but only just. So we've got 1950s rock and roll, people are still doing jive, and jitterbug. It's just about post-war. So it's very much rock and roll, and then we move on into the 60s with a completely new culture. So we're looking at a different social scene where people dance individually. So we have the birth of things like the twist and various different dance crazes that were individual, which was new. So we have the whole dancing around the handbag idea. So in Paint It Black, it's demonstrating, it starts off with the man at the front, 3 women at the back, because it's kind of suggested that they are backing dancers of a group, bearing in mind these songs are based on music from the Rolling Stones. So we have movements like the monkey, and they have other 60s movements like bring your arms over your head, and you could add a twist in. They stick their arms out, circle their hips right backwards, and then back the other way. They do a movement here where they circle their arm across and dig their foot in, and various other movements that are relevant to the 1960s. She could do it some movements in like this. So you need to do a little bit of research there. So that's the first part of the task. You must do some 1960s moves. The second part of the task is Christopher Bruce. Although he used culture and society to feed into his choreography, he was very influenced by Martha Graham. Therefore, a lot of his movement is very fluid and in a lot of ways quite balletic. So we tend to have everyday movement, like I've spoken about the 1960s, combined with some very slow lyrical qualities. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to add is slow and lyrical movements. For example, you could do a lifted held leg and then circle it round and take it off balance into behind side front. Or you could do like a circular, slow circular movement. You could do a tilted off balance. So I want either a held line, circular pathways, and fluid movements. So that's the next thing to add to the task. So I hope you're writing this down. The final thing I'd like you to add is that he does some quite fast-paced movements. So all of a sudden he'll do some quite intricate little stepping patterns. So you might do a fluid movement here. Say I did my behind side front. You might then go and 1 and 2 and into a little beat. So I want you to think about how you might add something like that. It does not need to be in a ballet style. It does not necessarily need to be in a contemporary style, but it needs some kind of fast-paced footwork in there. Maybe if you have a more street background, a more hip-hop background, a more tap background, you could include some sort of footwork similar to your favourite style. So that's my task. So just to give you an example, I'll do the kind of thing that I would like you to do and what I'm setting you. Give me 1 second. So I'd like all these all together. So 60s, fluid, intricate footwork. Okay, so we're going to do just I'm adding my circle, lift, and 1, 2, 3, 4, jump. Okay, just for some basic ideas. So, my task for you today is to create a little section of choreography based on that piece of music, Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. I'd really like you to try and come up with around a minute of choreography combining those 3 ideas. So it must have slow lyrical qualities, it must have fast intricate footwork, and it must have some 1960s movement. So do a little bit of research. From that, we'll have some motifs, some small little movement patterns that we might be able to develop. To develop those ideas within your minute, maybe think about changing levels and changing dynamics. So altering the speed, altering how sharp and how soft you make the movements. I hope that helps. Please now you can pause the video and try some of those ideas. Maybe use some of my movement ideas as a starting point. And the final thing, obviously it'd be lovely to see you face to face, but I'd really like to see your movement ideas that you make to Paint It Black. So if you could email them to me at swe@woking.ac.uk. That would be absolutely fantastic. And I really look forward to seeing you at some point in the very near future.